Historian underscored pinnacle leadership skill is the quality which enabled Emperor Menelik to score victory over Italy during the War of Adwa. Abebe Brhani has more on it.
In an exclusive interview with Amhara Media Corporation, Professor of History Shumet Sishagn stated that timing, generosity and participatory leadership skill were the greatest qualities of Emperor Menelik for scoring victory over Italy at the Battle of Adwa. As to the explanation of Professor Shumet, Emperor Menelik was very wise in identifying the right time for the War of Adwa.
Let's consider what the situation was like in Ethiopia 5-6 years before the Battle of Adwa. This was the time of the Great Famine in Ethiopia. Had Menelik rushed to that war before the time, he would most certainly have lost, because the country was ravaged by a cattle disease and terrible famine. So it would have been nearly impossible to mobilize that many troops and to be able to get the resources to support these troops. So Menelik understood the importance of waiting. He knew that he needs arms. He knew that a lot of diplomatic works would have to be performed, and he knew that he had to cement alliances with his own subordinates. So time was essential, and Menelik waited because the situation required waiting. Menelik was extremely patient. He understood the value of waiting. He understood the importance of timing. So he waited for the perfect time.
Professor Shumet explained that the kindness and generosity of Emperor Menelik helped him to get many followers, including his enemies, so that he became successful in fighting against Italian troops.
Menelik was truly kind and generous. He does not engage in overkill. Many of those who fought with him at Adwa were once upon a time his enemies, whom he had captured at the battlefield, some of whom were wounded, but they saw how Menelik treated them. He never engaged in overkill. So there were various methods that were employed to persuade the contending parties to surrender before the fight. Generous treatments were offered. All of this with the design of minimizing the ravages of war. More than any leader that I remember, Menelik was the one who was extremely careful to minimize the inevitable ravages of war.
Professor Shumet added that Menelik was a great cultivator of talent. This situation enabled him to get many heroes and war leaders who played a decisive role in the War of Adwa.
Menelik was also a great cultivator of talent. Many of those that fought at the Battle of Adwa were very ordinary young men that Menelik had cultivated, that Menelik had brought up. Menelik cultivated talent. He appreciated merit. It's not who these people were born from, it was what these people were capable of doing. So people like Balcha, Hafta Georgis, and all of those who did great and splendid heroism at the Battle of Adwa were ordinary people, ordinary young men that Menelik had cultivated. He saw their talent and he opened the avenue for them.
The professor elaborated that Emperor Menelik was participatory in his leadership. This participatory leadership gave a chance for other leaders, including Empress Aitu, to use their skill freely during the war.
Menelik allowed people with skill to flourish. They were free and they were independent. Menelik was not a controlling personality. Menelik was not an angry man. People did not look behind them as to what to do. They knew that Menelik would allow them. So many of the generals that performed those heroic exploits at the Battle of Adwa felt free and operated with that sense of freedom and dedication and commitment. Not many of the Ethiopian aristocracy or kings would have allowed their wives to exercise that kind of power and that kind of authority. Aitu was free to use her talent in public.